Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
Free National Movement Chairman Sidney Colley reacts to the mayhem experienced at yesterday's advanced polls. That story straight ahead.
Granville McCartney responds to comments made by a former prime minister. That story is coming up tonight, straight ahead.
Hubert Ingram says Perry Christie's time as prime minister is up. Plus,
a former PLP changes course for the F&M. That story's coming up, straight ahead.
News is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina McNeil. Topping news tonight, on the heels of a chaotic advance poll, Parliamentary Commissioner Sherlyn Hall's contract has expired. However, our news understands that despite skepticism over Hall's ability to handle the job, he will oversee next week's general election. The Free National Movement says Hall must go now, adding that following yesterday's catastrophe, the May 10th election could be an even bigger embarrassment. However, Hall says Bahamians will soon see he's not incompetent. Jasmine Brown reports.
Colley says the last thing he wants to see on May 10th is the chaos experienced at the advanced polls yesterday. Party Chairman Sidney Colley urged the Christie administration and the Parliamentary Registration Department to get it together before next week's general election. Colley said the F&M recognizes the parliamentary commissioner was out of his depth. He adds that with Hall's contract expiring today, the government should have acted quickly to replace him with someone more qualified.
It is now the Prime Minister's singular responsibility to ensure that a responsible person, knowledgeable about democratic elections, is immediately appointed to assume those responsibilities. The F&M will not sit by and go into a general election with this question unresolved.
Hall refused to explain what went wrong with yesterday's advanced poll. He was questioned by Guardian Radio News anchor Sherlyn Ferguson this morning on why the polls opened nearly an hour and a half behind schedule. According to Hall, the ballot boxes left his office to be delivered to the Kendall G.L. Isaacs gym in more than enough time for the polls to be opened at 8 a.m.
Late, the boxes left my office, I think about 20 minutes to 8, and Mr. Carl Smith received the boxes at the gym, and I think he made arrangements for them to be open at 8 o'clock.
But that didn't happen, though.
Speak to Mr. Smith.
Okay. And people weren't permitted to vote until after 9 o'clock yesterday morning. So what was that delay about?
Speak to Mr. Smith.
When asked if all the administrative issues, including the decision to no longer use the National Stadium, rest at the feet of Smith, who is the permanent secretary of the Ministry of National Security, Hall insisted he was put in charge of operations at the polling station.
Do you know if everyone online actually got to vote?
I think they did, yes. Speak to Mr. Smith.
Mr. Bethel, you're parliamentary commissioner, though. You understand why people would want these answers from you.
I know that, madam. We delegate some responsibilities. The parliamentary commission can do that. And that was delegated to Mr. Smith.
So you're taking no responsibility for anything that happened yesterday?
I said, ma'am, speak with you respectfully. Speak to Mr. Smith.
There are people who are saying that perhaps you're not competent enough to pull off an error-free election. What do you say to those people?
I am competent, ma'am. Everyone has an opinion. I am competent. Just wait and see.
Are you worried that you may face disciplinary action because of what happened yesterday?
Well, that's up to the government, ma'am.
F&M National Election Coordinator C.A. Smith says it is a complete and utter embarrassment that the department could not get it right in a 21st century Bahamas. He said if yesterday is any indication, we won't have a free and fair election next week.
What we saw yesterday was there was an absence of all of the necessary tools to ensure that we will have free and fair elections. And so to pass that on and to say that a civil servant should be blamed is really not part of our democracy. The minister is responsible, and Dr. Nottage must take full responsibility for the chaos that happened yesterday.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Well, amid the fallout over chaos at Wednesday's advance poll, Prime Minister Perry Christie suggested the blame should not be placed solely at the feet of the parliamentary commissioner. Christie says he was advised that a senior official made the call to have 8,000 advance voters in New Providence cast their ballots at just one location instead of two as planned.
I'm told that someone senior made a decision that this could be accommodated in this place by itself, and surprisingly to me, I mean, I'm surprised, but I have to wait to find out if in fact that is true, and that involves more than Mr. Hall.
When asked today to respond to criticism over the advance poll, Hall urged reporters to speak with Permanent Secretary Carl Smith. The Prime Minister also dismissed as lunacy any suggestions that the many setbacks and irregularities experienced yesterday were a ploy by the government to frustrate voters and steal the general election.
How could you steal it with this? Everybody voting. I think the only issue here is that it took time for people to vote. All right, but no one has questioned the authenticity of the vote or the process of the vote. It's lunacy to do so. All right, I mean, absolute, but of course, you know, lunacy exists in this election campaign. But I, you know, in terms of what people say and think, but the fact that there has been administrative challenges, meaning the time it took people to vote, it in itself has to do with how effective your administration is.
Christie, who was one of the last voters to take part in the advance poll, added that when it comes to the integrity of the electoral process, that happens in the voters' booth.
The people voted. There's no challenge as to integrity, as far as I'm aware, in this process here. But we'll find out in that regard. But if you feel you're losing, you're bound to start crying.
Well, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham says Prime Minister Christie has less than a week to enjoy his time in office as the Progressive Liberal Party is on course for defeat. Ingraham's comments came as he addressed F&M supporters at a mass rally last night. Kyle Joaquin reports.
Time's up, my brother. You are not going to become a 3 times Prime Minister. The people of the Bahamas are going to pull your number. And so come election day next week, bushcrack, man gone.
Ingraham said just like the country got rid of him in 2012, next week is Christie's turn. The former Prime Minister said the Bahamian people have simply lost trust in Prime Minister Christie because of his many stories on Bahamar, his crime plan that Ingraham said has failed, national health insurance, and of course, VAT revenue. It was his first time speaking at a mass rally in Nassau since 2012 when the F&M was kicked out of office. He said it's time for Bahamians to check its cookie jar and get answers to a list of questions.
Time for Alison Gibson to account for dropping charges against persons accused of murdering the Prime Minister's press officer 2, 3 o'clock in the morning in one dark alley down the back here. And everybody go free? What they covering up? We want to know the story, all the story.
Ingraham mentioned the double bill the government got for the burnt Bamsey dorm, saying all Bahamians got were a bunch of pictures of bananas. Then there's the latest PLP promise of free electricity.
If you got this sweet deal about electricity, turn my light on now. Fire them, roll them out, fire them. It's like that stupid promise they made the police. I can pay you all overtime on the 29th of May. But you ain't gonna be around on the 29th of May. Fire them.
F&M leader Dr. Hubert Minnis chiming in on the Christie attack, pointing to the state of the constituency the Prime Minister has represented for decades.
While Christie had gotten richer and richer over the years, he continues to represent a constituency where many still have to go to the pump to get drinking water, and where many still utilize outside toilets. Given this track record, do you think he really cares about you and your problems?
The F&M is in Long Island tonight for a mass rally, then Grand Bahama on Friday. For our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham had a lot more to say about the Christie administration's performance over the past 5 years, Bahamar, and the state of the country today during his guest appearance on hit TV show On the Record with host Jerome Sawyer. Tune in at 8 p.m. tonight for the RTV exclusive. And following the fiasco at the advance poll, Democratic National Alliance leader Granville McCartney says he is gravely concerned with the integrity of the process. This after he learned where the ballot boxes from the advance poll are being held until the May 10th general election.
We were able to see where the ballots are being held, and they're being held under a staircase at the Parliamentary Department's office. Which is not secured at all. There were also issues with regards to the sealing of the envelope with the ballots. The tape was not secured on many of them, and in one in particular, Mount Moriah, was not secured at all. As a matter of fact, we are told Mount Moriah was not sealed.
McCartney says he witnessed many ballot boxes leaving with broken seals. In 2017, he says security must be a priority to preserve the integrity of the election.
They ought to be very secured in a vault, I would imagine, and not under a staircase that anyone can have access to. Anyone can go in to any of those boxes. Come on, I mean, we've had elections that's been stolen before, and we've had instances where people have attempted to do things to take the election. We certainly don't want that happening in this election. So I think we need to ensure that there's all security is put in place.
Still to come on our news, the Prime Minister dismisses claims police officers won't get their overtime pay this month. That and more when our news returns.